Hey guys, Alex here with Armadillo Armament. Today we're going to be discussing the RMR HD, the long-awaited upgrade to the venerable RMR and RMR Type 2. Before we get started on that, I have partnered with Red Pawn Shop. For every item in your order, he is going to be removing 1 pound of junk from the ocean and planting a tree. You're not only buying a really cool armadillo patch with quad nods and an MCX, you are also saving the planet. If you use code 5% off, I will get a small kickback and you'll get a really cool patch. All right, so the RMR HD, the long awaited evolution of the RMR, and specifically the RMR Type 2. It's pretty common knowledge that the RMR has been the prevailing red dot over the past many years. HoloSun has started to kind of take over the market with their enhanced feature sets, but it's also widely known that the RMR is really the most durable optic that exists out there. I recommend you look at Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics, his reviews, and his white paper online to see more information on this. But the RMR, in my opinion, is the gold standard of pistol optics. The SRO that Trijicon recently came out with a couple years ago is a specialized reflex optic, right? SRO, that doesn't quite fill the same space as the RMR and the RMR HD. And it wasn't intended to, but it's important to note that because Trijicon has started to kind of keep up with the times. They have noticed that HoloSun is into the multiple reticle game, and they do have side loading or top loading batteries, larger windows, the list goes on. I really recommend you watch my SRO video if you want more information on Trijicon and kind of where they've come from. And also, it'll be a great accompanying piece to this video. But we have landed at the RMR HD. The RMR HD was announced, give or take, between 1 and 2 years ago, alongside the RCR, which I will have a review on in the future, but I will also be mentioning during this video, and it's very important that I do so. The RMR HD is a open style reflex optic, whereas the RCR is a mailbox type optic or a closed optic, similar to, let's say, an Acro P2 or an Aimpoint T2, right? It is an enclosed red dot system. What's funny about this is that the RCR, in my opinion, is a phenomenal evolution of the RMR, whereas the RMR HD, I'm not too fond of. And I'll be getting into those reasons right now. So, what is Trijicon trying to do with the RMR HD? Well, the RMR is known for its durability, but it is also known for its small glass. It is known for its bottom loading battery. It is known for moisture getting underneath that battery tray, right? And there were definite improvements that could happen with the RMR series. I'm happy to say that Trijicon has definitely been listening to its customer base, and they have made some really cool changes to the system. First of all, the RMR HD comes in a 1 MOA model and a 3.25 MOA model, much to the chagrin of people that really enjoy 5 MOA optics. I personally, I like a happy medium. I'm happy with a 2 or 3 MOA dot. I'm even happy with a 1 MOA. And I don't find a 5 MOA to be completely necessary, but some people prefer the SRO with its 5 MOA dot. Mostly competition shooters, I should say. But what's really important about the RMR HD, one of its most exciting features that I'm going to highlight right away, which really is the highlight of the optic, is going to be this front-facing sensor right here. This is a light sensor, a RMR Type 2. If you, for the SRO, if you press both of the buttons on, it will take the ambient light and it will adjust the dot to the surroundings, mostly above it though. So if you are in a well-lit room like this, it is going to make a decently bright dot. However, if you are in a dark room and you are looking into, let's say, a light room, it is instead going to pick up the dark environment you are in. It is not going to create a brighter dot, and instead you are going to have a extremely faint dot. That is a problem that the SRO also shares with the RMR. The RMR HD tries and succeeds in fixing that problem. This really is, in my opinion, the most important aspect of the RMR HD. And like I said, it is the reason I'm starting off with this conversation topic. The auto brightness is phenomenal. This weapon is clear, and I will be having videos throughout this video showing the brightness from the different reticles, but just for the purpose of this conversation, as you can see, the reticle is a pretty adequate brightness for the environment that it's currently in, right? It's not overly bright, it's not overly dim. In fact, I would argue that the camera doesn't pick it up too well. When I'm looking through this, it is a very clearly outlined reticle, and it is the perfect brightness for the environment that I'm currently in. That is a huge step forward for the RMR. Most people will tell you that just locking in your brightness and staying with a like 6 or a 7 on your RMR is ideal because you don't want to be in a situation where you need to draw your gun, present, and let's say you're outside and your dim is too, or your dot is too dim, right? Instead, it's better to have it at a kind of jack of all trades brightness. The RMR HD completely fixes that. It is, like I said, without a doubt, the best feature of the optic, and it's something that I'm going to miss. Now, what else does the RMR HD bring to the table? Well, it has a top loading battery. As you can see by that little plus right there, that is the battery cover. I've never had to change it, but it has a top loading battery, so you no longer need to remove the optic from your pistol in order to change that. Um, I'd like to make a quick aside on that. Many people say that is a big deal with the RMR Type 2. I would say that it is, sure, it is slightly more convenient to have this battery tray, but you can go minimum a year with a RMR type optic. I had an RMR CC that I had on for like 3 years straight, and it never got to any low point. I should have changed it once a year, or even once every year and a half or 2 years. I know Aaron Cowan says it. He says that he does it on his birthday. However, I have found the battery life on these to be phenomenal, and I don't consider that to be a massive pro. Is it convenient? Yes, but is it a game changer? Is it a optic seller? Not quite, not in my opinion at least. If you never shoot your gun, it may be a big deal for you, but I shoot my guns a lot, probably like every other week at this point. What else does the RMR HD do well? Well, the bezel, the optic housing is significantly larger than the original RMR Type 2. And in many ways, it actually is getting closer in line with the SRO, the specialized reflex optic. I think the RMR HD is a good in between in sizes, and I haven't had too many rounds on this. I'm guessing less than 1,000. I've already made up my mind on the optic. However, I think that this optic size is perfectly adequate for picking up the dot, even if you don't have a perfect presentation. We don't live in a world where we are always going to be under no stress whatsoever. Even when I'm running drills, every once in a while, I will mess up that optic presentation, and having a larger optic really allows me to not lose that sight picture. I'm able to course correct. Whereas the RMR-CC, while a phenomenal optic, I found was small enough that it did cause that issue every once in a while. So the RMR HD is bigger than the RMR. It is also a little bit wider, but don't let that sway you away from concealed carrying it. The buttons are on the left and the right, and I have not found a issue where this being in my pants is going to cause the buttons to be depressed. So it's not really a concern. I do understand that your pistol slide is likely as thick as this RMR HD anyway. The last benefit, or the last couple benefits I have of the RMR HD is, first of all, I'm going to call this like a indexing point. What this line is for is when you do present the optic up to your eye, if you can see the top of that line, it means your optic is not realistically perfectly centered. Our eyes just kind of gravitate towards making that it's very easy to track a straight line, right? It's the same reason why the 507, the Vulcan reticle, is really popular because it just has that outside circle that helps you kind of see that center dot. It's not a huge deal, but it is a small bonus, as well as you can use it as a aiming reference. Sage Dynamics has a great video on this where he would put whiteout on his prior optics. Now, what I mean by this is if your dot goes down and you do point your optic out, you can actually look at that line, make sure that it is, of course, level and you're not seeing the top of that line, and your bullets will actually impact pretty close to where you're aiming. It's just a nice little quality of life feature that Trijicon has included. One final note, the notch filter does still exist on the RMR HD. That notch filter is not only to block out certain types of light from kind of obstructing your dot, but also it is going to enhance your battery life. We are looking at the target. We are target focused when we use our red dot, both eyes open shooting. So I don't consider notch filters to be a huge deal. However, if you do and you just want the nicest, clearest glass possible, you will definitely be better served by something like a Delta Point Pro, even though I don't prefer that, or a SRO as well. Has very nice glass. All right, so let's get into negatives and my overall experience with the RMR HD. First of all, my first RMR HD was the 1 MOA model. I purchased it from Nightwood Guns, a great YouTube channel actually. I found him on Reddit. He said he was selling one. I bought it off him. Really great guy. Go check out his channel. And he didn't sell me a lemon, or at least I don't think so. He seems like a very stand-up gentleman. However, he gave me a 1 MOA RMR HD, and when it came in, I noticed that the plus button, so right over here, had a tiny little like bulge in it. I'm going to call it an air pocket. It could have been like an epoxy issue. I don't know what it was. And I reached out to Trijicon. I reached out to him actually, but I also reached out to Trijicon and I said, hey, is this an issue? And they said, send it in. I was kind of annoyed by that, but they paid for a label and I sent it in. And Nightwood the entire time was very kind. He said, hey, tell me what happens. He was great. But Trijicon, they got back to me and they said, we're going to replace your entire optic. I said, okay, that's really good. I didn't even think it was going to be a huge issue. And if it was, I figured they would just replace the button. No, they offered to replace the entire optic. So I'm happy to say that the Trijicon warranty has maintained onto the RMR HD, even with it being in such high demand. I also anticipated it to take 2 months to get out to me. Instead, they got it back to me within a week. During that process, I mentioned, hey, can we change this from a 1 MOA model to the 3.25 MOA model? And they gladly did that. So right here, we no longer have the Nightwood Guns 1 MOA RMR HD. We have the 3.25. Now, I give companies the benefit of the doubt. I let them fix their issue at least once before I throw in the towel. One of my next videos is going to be on an Alchemy custom weaponry, and it is going to be very negative because I've had the same problems with them as I do really with this Trijicon. And that is to say a bunch of little nitpicks. So I got this optic back and I tried to mount it on my Alchemy. Here on the screen is what that looks like. Yeah, my Alchemy wasn't sized for the RMR HD. There is a small difference between the front scoop on this SRO and this RMR HD. It is the scoop on the HD is a little bit lesser than the SRO, which means that this is not going to work with Sapphireland holsters. It is not going to work with a lot of concealment holsters. And finding a gun that this will work with is extremely difficult to do. I bought this for my Quantico high cap and I wasn't able to do it. That is with using a sealer plate and shaving the bottom of the housing of this RMR HD, of that front scoop. I'll put a picture on the screen right now of what that looks like. So I dremeled my HD and I used a sealer plate and I still couldn't get it to work, even though online there are many people that use the RMR HD on a Quantico high cap. Okay, so that leads me to my third point, and that is dimensionally, I don't think the HDs are very similar. I think Trijicon is having a problem keeping them true to size. And I'm not expecting every HD or every RMR to be within microns of each other. Like, guys, there's going to be a small amount of variance with like the applying of the coating or even the actual structure of the optic. I get that. But I expect them to be like reasonably close to each other. And I'm fairly certain my RMR HD was probably out of spec. That's another issue with the HD that I've never had with any other Trijicon product. The next issue that I have with the Trijicon HD is going to be the overhang of the optic. Now, the SRO has a little bit of an overhang. Actually, more of an overhang maybe than the RMR HD. They're pretty comparable, actually. And I don't complain about this too much, but this is a competition optic. This is an optic that I kind of play around. I play around its faults, and instead, I'm getting a wonderful window and a wonderful competition optic. The RMR HD, the overhang on the HD is strictly a annoyance because I don't run this on many EDC guns. I actually run this on my Roland Special, but I wouldn't recommend this on your EDC gun. This is positioned as a EDC optic, so it's going to be treated a little bit differently. The overhang on the Glock with the RMR HD, this is right up against the breech face. What that means is it is going to get carbon on this lens within 10 rounds. When I was firing this on my Quantico, it didn't perfectly fit, but I did technically get it on there. When I was firing this on my Quantico, in the first 20 rounds or the first magazine, I was almost shooting occluded. Okay. What that means is there was so much carbon on the front lens that I couldn't see, I think, like the bottom half of this dot optic. I train occluded shooting actually, so it's not a huge deal for me, but I like to keep my optics clean, guys. And the RMR, the original RMR, never had this problem because it would have sat back to about there. So the breech face wouldn't then spew all that carbon and oil on your optic after the first shot. This isn't a problem that many other optics have. Holosun dots don't have this issue. The Acro doesn't have this issue. The prior Trijicons don't have this issue, with the exception of the SRO. So why did we move towards this front scoop is my question. To accommodate the battery being able to be lifted out? No. Surely there must have been a better way. Okay, maybe you could have put it back here, or you could have put it on the side, or you could have put it on the top like the RCR. I don't buy that. I don't think they needed to use that front scoop to allow that battery tray to be accessible. Another reason I see people say the RMR HD has that front scoop is because it is going to raise it up and push it out a little bit, and you're going to see a little bit less of your slide. And in turn, you're going to have more like usable real estate. Once again, I consider that kind of BS because we're shooting with both eyes open, and I'm willing to make sacrifices as long as I can have the RMR durability and a changeable battery. Maybe make the window slightly smaller, or don't worry about that field of view. Um, the front scoop really is a large majority of my issues I have with the HD, from the compatibility with the Alchemy to the carbon that is just going to be immediately thrown at your optic. Speaking of overhang, if you decide to put this on something like a staccato, you can run into reliability issues. Aaron Cowan, once again, has a phenomenal video on this where in the manual it says do not have the optic overhang on your gun. If you have a gun that's going to have this overhang even more on the breech face, don't use the HD or the SRO because it can cause malfunctions with your firearm, right? A bullet can get, or a casing can get stuck in that little housing, right? The staccato that I'm going to be purchasing soon, likely the new Staccato C, I'm not even able to use the RMR HD on that because it is going to overhang so much that it will cause reliability issues. Some people say it's not a problem. Some people, every single mag they're having a round or two gets stuck between that little face, right? That's a massive issue. Those three reasons right there, carbon compatibility and the overhang, immediately turn this optic from a interesting outing by Trijicon to improve upon the RMR Type 2 to a optic that I won't even really consider on any of my guns. In my eyes, the RMR HD should have been something similar to the Holosun, I think it's the 507 or 407 comp. So it should have just been a larger RMR with the light sensor, and that is it. Even if you need to get to the bottom of the optic to change the battery, because then you wouldn't need to worry about carbon, you wouldn't need to worry about overhang, and you wouldn't need to worry about malfunctions. And with a Trijicon product, I'm kind of expecting a simple optic that just works. And the RMR HD is the exact opposite of that. All right. Um, I don't want this video to be completely negative. The HD's light sensor, like I said prior, is phenomenal. The night vision settings on the HD are also great. Everything is well spaced apart. I forgot to mention the reticle. If you are interested in a reticle, like a fighter plane reticle or a Halo 3 battle rifle reticle, if you get that reference, um, the HD is the first Trijicon product. First? Yeah, I think it's the first pistol Trijicon product to have this reticle option. Holosun's been doing it for years, but I liked at one point the reticle. I think if you are new to red dots, the reticle really drags your eyes to it, and it can make actually acquiring that dot on presentation easier. And if you're new to red dots, it can be a benefit. Now, I don't use that dot whatsoever or that reticle whatsoever. I just use a standard dot because I think it's a little bit busy. However, like I said, if you're a new shooter, you may appreciate that. Um, but overall, those are my thoughts on the HD. I am not going to turn this in. I wanted to have a much longer review on this. I'm not going to turn this into a huge review because I'm done with it. I have no reason to ever purchase this in the future, in my opinion, which is a shame because I was very excited for this optic. Instead, the optic I'm much more interested in is the RCR, which by all definitions looks like a RMR Type 2 that they just said, screw it, fill in the housing and put another sheet of glass and just put the battery on top. That right there sounds like a better upgraded RMR to me than this ever will be. This is a bastardized SRO RMR hybrid, whereas the RCR seems like a legitimately RMR evolution. Okay. All right, so the RMR HD. I'm going to get some hate for this one, and I'm especially going to get some hate from the next video. So tell me what you think about this. I hate it. You might love it. Tell me your experiences. Tell me how it works with actual shooting, so competition shooting, drills. Is it working with any of your holsters? What guns is it working on? I'm very interested to know. And as always, thank you guys for tuning into the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.